the best way to come out of these things. I think we did highlight earlier on that we need to be agile. We need to evolve with the times. We need to see what works for our communities and our municipalities. And we need to change the way that we do things. But with your expertise and your knowledge, especially at these sessions, I'm sure when you go back home, when you go back to your organizations, you'll be able to even come up with better ideas to transform the local government as a whole. Thank you so much for that session, colleagues. We are going to be moving to our last session of the day, where we are continuing with our discussions around affordability, around the tariffs. I think one would say that this afternoon session really challenges us to look at the tariffs. I'm going to call upon these colleagues quickly to come to the stage. If you can just give me a moment. I'm going to call upon Duma Mhaule from KwaDukuza Municipality. Duma Mhaule has 17 years of experience in local government, a career that started at eThekwini Electricity as a candidate engineer in 2007. He currently holds a position as a director, Electrical Engineering Services Business Unit in KwaDukuza Municipality. Is responsible for providing the strategic leadership on sustainable operations, repairs, and maintenance of the electrical distribution networks, and so on and so forth. But what's key here, he holds an MBA and is a registered professional engineer with the Engineering Council of South Africa as a member of the Institute of Electrical Engineers. So with him and Mr. Nhlanhla Ngeti from SALGA was presenting, they are almost on the same wavelength. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a warm welcome to Mr. Duma Mhaule. And then we are going to be also having Mr. Mervyn Abrams, who is the program coordinator at the Pietermaritzburg Economic Justice and Dignity Group, which publishes the monthly Household Affordability Index. He's a graduate of the KU Leuven, Belgium, and has worked in trade unions, academic institutions, and NGOs. His work focuses on the issues of household affordability and the impact of the political economy on low-income household. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Mr. Mervyn Abrams. Thank you. If the technical guys can also assist me with moving the podium. And lastly, I think he has introduced himself. The 50-rand guy, the guy who came from Treasury to make profit in KZN. Colleagues, let's give welcome for Dirk once more again. Rajesh Ranjit from KZN Provincial Cocta will facilitate this session, but obviously Dirk Spongeberg.
As long as you don't say SpongeBob.
Will lead the presentation. If you can also join us, Rajesh, to facilitate the session, we'll greatly appreciate that. Over to you. Thank you.
The thing I want to say is the two presenters before me, the one said it was a difficult question that I raised. You are not allowed to ask us difficult questions. Second one, I'm not as beautiful as the previous presenter. So please, I want to a different platform here. Thank you very much again, and welcome to all the colleagues here at the front and the learned friends. I feel sometimes very small if you hear what other people's qualifications entails and stuff like that. But thank you very much again for the opportunity. If we look at the revenue solution, at the revenue cost-reflective tariff tools and the affordability of it, there's a few things that must be taken into account. Now, first of all, I want to indicate to you that I'll compare cost reflectiveness and affordability. And we're going to look at the social economic profile of studies that has been done, the average monthly households of incomes, the average property values in municipalities, the number of indigent households, all these things, together with economic drivers and activities, specifically for municipalities. How does it influence this cost reflectiveness and affordability? Now, as beautiful as it can be, on the right-hand side, the South African population, all colors, you can see. We're going to look and debate between implementing cost-reflective tariffs and ensuring affordability, as it is a crucial issue for utilities and policymakers and consumers. Now, if I'm talking about utilities and policymakers, that's me and you. We are the utilities, we are the municipality that must determine the tariffs, and we are also the policymaker as per the policy in the municipality, but then we also have NERSA on the one side. Now, the day that NERSA started, I thought it's going to become troublesome for us. And I think today it's true. NERSA came and they came with regulations, the NERSA regulations. And now this NERSA regulations bite us. Why? Because now we must fulfill to the cost of supply studies. And NERSA is now a partner of us. So those are the kind of things that sometimes happen if we want to improve and the consequences are following us. But that's not what I'm going to debate. I rather want to say, what is the definition of cost-reflective tariffs? Our previous speakers mainly touched on it, and you have already heard what it's all about. But cost-reflective tariffs goes along with pricing of services to ensure that you fully cover the cost of providing the service and the distribution and the maintenance. Mr. Nagidi mentioned that. We're also going to look at operational costs, the day-to-day expenses, salaries and maintenance. That's my one concern. We are exactly the same same size municipality with the same infrastructure, everything the same. But nowadays, the one municipality has 2,000 personnel in electricity, and the other one has 200. And this cost of supply studies look at salaries as a basic cost, as a fixed cost. So immediately the one with the 2,000 personnel will be much more expensive according to the cost of supply. It's a worrying factor for me. We also have to look at capital financing cost, investment in infrastructure and asset management. It has been said, I just have to say it again. And because I prepared for this presentation in those manner. We also have to look at administrative cost. Now, what is administrative cost? Everybody talks about ring fencing electricity. Now, we can ring fence electricity, but we must keep in mind if we ring fence electricity at our municipal offices, we will then have 4 municipal managers. The one for electricity, because he must be ring fenced. The one for water, one for refuse, one for sewer, for wastewater. And except for that, we must have a CFO for every one of those services. Because what is ring fencing? That is what it is. You must have the cost for those people in that specific service. So we do it a little bit differently. And that is also something that's difficult for people to be explained. We call it indirect cost. A portion of our municipal manager or governance and administration will have to go to those services. So you cannot really ring fence everything. There's a decision that you have to make it economical. Otherwise, please do me a favor, put in 4 or 5 municipal managers in your municipality. Put in 4 or 5 CFOs there. And specifically for electricity, you put one of those people there. Affordability, that's exactly what it says. Will that be affordable for the municipality? No, it will not be affordable. And therefore, ensuring tariffs are within the financial reach of the socio-economic groups, we have to ensure that it's affordable. We must make sure that it's affordable. A commonly used metric to assess affordability is the ratio of utility bills to household incomes. If your household income is 4,000 rand a month, sorry, I know yours is more like 400,000 a month. Some people are listening, others don't. So those that's not listening, you agree with the 400,000 rand a month. Sorry for you. Definitely, we'll have to look at that. You can afford to pay an electricity bill or a water bill of 2,000-3,000 rand a month. But the person with a 4,000 rand a month revenue, they will not be able to do it. And therefore, we must cater for them. We must make sure that we bring them into consideration if we determine tariffs. For many low-income households, spending more than 6% of their income on energy cost is quite a significant burden. Just think about a person earning 4,000 rand a month. 6% is only 240 rand. But 240 rand can buy many loaves of bread. Many. Some people can't even afford to buy one loaf of bread. The challenge lies in aligning financial sustainability with equitable access to essential services. We all need to have equitable access to essential services. This is one of the bad things that I have to mention, but the sewer line must be used by all of us. Doesn't matter if you are earning 400,000 a month or 4,000 a month. And for that reason, we must make sure that everybody has access to that service. People here on the podium with me, I please want you to make sure that whenever I say something here, that you must criticize me or support me. And please, if you support me, you'll go alive home tonight. Benefits of cost-reflective tariffs, financial sustainability. We must be able to maintain and expand our infrastructure and reduce subsidies. We must be able to have investment incentives. We can't just make a break even. We must invest in our infrastructure. We must use resources efficiently that reflects cost correctly and not discourage waste. We must ensure that transparency and accountability takes place. What is accountability and transparency? That people will understand the tariffs, and very, very important, accountability. We can't waste. We can't spend money on the wrong things. Supports long-term viability of utility services. We cannot just buy something today, the nicest thing for our offices, but it will not have long-term viability for our services. The challenge for us in the benefit of cost-reflective tariffs is that it may sometimes exclude low-income households due to higher prices. I want to make it cost-reflective, but because I want to make it cost-reflective, the low-income households will probably not afford it. The case of cost-reflectiveness, what factors determine tariffs? Now, the previous speakers already mentioned it, but I have to indicate it to you again so that you just take note of it. Service charges, that's number one. We must know how many customers we have, and we must know what kind of volumes are used. That will dictate our service charges in one way, 50% of it. But except for that, we also get operational grants that must be distributed between the services. Indigent subsidies. When I looked at budgets of municipalities and we're looking at cost, some municipalities don't allocate equitable share to their services. There's no equitable share for electricity, nothing for sewer, nothing for refuse, nothing for waste disposal, etc., for water. That helps you with your tariffs. You cannot exclude it. Expenditure things, I'm not going to mention all of them, but the most important for me is the red one at the bottom, indirect cost. A portion of our governance administration must be included in our expenditure for our services. The municipal manager is not just there for other things. He's also there, or she's also there for services, for water, electricity, refuse, and sewer services. The same with your corporate directors, the same with your community directors, the same with all the other directors. Sorry, I can't include the traffic officers. They make their own money. How is the equitable share allocated to the different services? Now, I wonder whom of you have seen how this is allocated. Perhaps, just by indication, whom of you have seen this table? Sades, please don't put up your hand. There's one. Nobody else. And that's because you don't read your DORA. Eh? You don't read your DORA, and this is in your DORA. And what this thing is saying to you, it tells you how much you must allocate per individual indigent household to the different services. And I can't leave this portion out. It's going to waste time, but I have to do it. Whom of you know what's the difference between the Division of Revenue Bill and the Division of Revenue Act? Whom of you know what's the difference between the two? Yes, anybody? Okay, let me make it easier. What comes first, the Division of Revenue Bill or the Division of Revenue Act? The bill. Do you know why the bill is first and the act is last? Bill is the name of a man. Dora is the name of a lady. Thank you, ladies. At least now you're awake. People, if you look at this allocation, you'll see for energy, an amount of 136 Rand per month should be allocated for indigents, for an indigent household. So if you have 1,000 indigent households, then it will be 136 Rand times 1,000 times 12. And that amount must be allocated to your electricity service as part of your equitable share. For water, it should be 196 Rand. For sanitation, that's your wastewater, it's 127 Rand. And for refuse, 107 Rand a month. We found many municipalities don't do it. And that helps your tariffs. That makes the tariffs a little bit easier on the people. And you cannot go and charge an indigent person 200 Rand a month for refuse. That is not correct. 50 Rand. Charge them 107 Rand. They don't have to pay for it. Your equitable share must carry that burden. So don't worry about charging them the full amount. That's just an indication for those of you who does not know or who do not know where to find this this document. It's in the Division of Revenue Act or the DORA or in that bill. The case of affordability, and gentlemen, sorry for ladies, I wanted to say ladies and gentlemen. I haven't said. Gentlemen, please, we are looking at the importance of affordability as a key factor of influencing, and the key factors that influence affordability. Willingness to pay. People stop with that. They are not willing anymore. And you know why they are not willing to pay anymore? Because the tariffs increase too much. And why does the tariffs increase too much? Because there are many people who are not paying. So your debt impairment is increasing your tariffs. Social economic impacts, high tariffs can exacerbate, inequalities affecting vulnerable populations. Out there, I can't say in here, I know. Out there is a lot of vulnerable people, and they cannot afford not even 10 Rand service fees. So we must prepare our tariffs in such a way that we also prepare for them, that they should receive the service that they should receive without saying that they must, they can afford it. Social equity. What is the average property value? And what is the number of indigents in your municipality? You must know that. In eThekwini, your average value of your properties would probably 800 to 900,000 rand or even more. But in a small town, I don't know if you know a place like Tromsburg, in the middle of the Free State. Those people's average valuations will probably be 100, 102, 120, 150,000 rand. So please sell your house here, go and buy there. You'll save on property rates. So definitely if the values of the houses are so low in that area, the services should also be much cheaper than what it will be in this area. We must protect vulnerable populations and ensure that everyone has rights to essential services. Social equity is important, people. Economic growth, we cannot just forget about everything and see to it that tariffs will increase or tariffs will not increase. Economic growth is important for all municipalities. And we must look at the economic drivers for our municipalities. We must support small businesses, increase disposable income for households and attract investments. The more investment you can get, the better. Now, sometimes a municipal official will say to me, but let's just increase businesses' tariffs so that we can get more money. Businesses contribute this little to your budget. Residential households contribute the big portion of your municipalities. Go and check it out. So if you want to increase those small businesses tariffs, you're going to chase them away. We must also look at political stability, prevent social unrest if our tariffs are too high. The case of affordability, I'll continue. What kind of strategies can we bring in to enhance affordability? We must look at direct financial assistance. Now, normally direct financial assistance is where you assist your low-income households, your indigents. We can look at weatherization programs. Definitely where people lives in the Karoo, they can get solar for their warm water or maybe for the electricity because there's always sun. So why should they use other forms of electricity? Yes, maybe they must put up more boreholes there, but that's another thing that we must look at. We must make sure that we allow households to retain their discretionary income for certain essential things that they need. Cross-subsidization, higher rates for wealthier users to support lower rates for those in need. Say yes, I will support. I've said you are the 400,000 rand a month revenue people. Are all of you willing, even if you only earn 20,000 or 30,000, are you willing to support, to subsidize services of the less wealthier people? We must make that mind change. Yes, I know you pay more rates and more taxes, but that's good. Income-based rate structures, we can look at block tariffs. The more you use, the more expensive it becomes. So the more water you use, the more you will pay, the more refuse. And the higher your income, I can promise you, the more refuse you will have. The less income, the less refuse you will have. You don't believe me? You don't believe me? Okay. Please have a look at that. Check it out. Measure it. Make sure that you understand that. There's one thing about inclining block tariffs that I am totally against, and that is your electricity. Remember, we have inclining block tariffs for electricity. So the more you use, the more you pay. Do you agree with that? You know what's happening now with me and other people that's rich? Yeah, I think I'm rich. I have 2 daughters, so I'm very rich. I have 2 daughters. Because I'm rich, I can afford to go to solar and put in solars. So the moment I go and put in solars, the poorest of the poor will have to pay now more for electricity because I don't subsidize them anymore and the electricity lose money. Think about it. We must make sure that we have levelized billing programs. These programs stabilize monthly bills so that the bill is not one month very high, the next month very low, especially between winter and summer. I know you all complain about Eskom's winter and summer tariffs. We must look at demand response programs. Utilities can be incentivized for customers to reduce their services or their energy usage during peak times, and community engagement and outreach is very important. The more you talk to people, the less they will complain. And I know you won't get 100% support. You won't get 100% of people that agrees with you. But the one or two that you will reach out to, they will send the message out to their colleagues and their friends. And that is a very important one. Policy frameworks that we can support affordability. Policymakers should establish regulations to mandate municipalities or utilities to consider affordability in the rate setting tariffs, but I think that is taking place in our country. The municipality must keep mind. Then we must strike a balance. You can see there's a word called conclusion. We must strike a balance and say we must address affordability in utility services for promoting social equity and ensuring that all households have access to necessary resources without undue financial strain. Yes, everybody must get the service, but we must not put undue strain on ourselves. By implementing targeted assistance programs and adopting flexible rate structures, as well as talking to communities, engaging them, utilities can create a more inclusive environment that supports both economic and economic stability and public health. Yes, that's true. If your tariffs are too high, it is causing health problems to people, especially the dads, the heart attacks, and the mums, that they must explain why the tariffs are so high. The collaborative efforts of regulators, utility providers, and community organizations are vital in crafting effective solutions to enhance affordability while we maintain sustainable utility services. The final thought from my side is we must have a pragmatic balance, and financial sustainability with equitable access is so important. If we don't do that, you this morning lose out on a 50 Rand profit. Thank you. Gentlemen, please argue these statements that I've made. He said he can't. He agrees with me with the 50 Rand that he lost out. Yes, please, you can continue.
Thank you. Afternoon, Program Director. Afternoon, colleagues. I just want to maybe focus on more the economic outlook and the outlook for economic trends from a consumer point of perspective. A lot of theory has been said in terms of cost-reflective tariffs. We've spoken a lot about cost-reflective tariffs. But I want to try and drill down on the economic outlook and try for once maybe put ourselves in the shoes of consumers. As I've indicated, we've spoken a lot about cost-reflective tariffs. But have we paused for a minute to put ourselves in terms of the shoes of the ordinary consumer on the street? And I want to share a few things with the House this afternoon. So if we look at the economic downturn brought about by COVID-19, the pandemic, lots of businesses closed, people lost their jobs, unemployment rate increased. Then we had the civil unrest. I think KZN was very badly hit by that. Again, a lot of companies folded, people lost their jobs. We had floods in KZN as well, and that contributed to the downturn in the economy of the province and the country. We had high unemployment rate. We still have high unemployment rates. We have high indigency levels. Only now we're seeing the repo rate and interest rates coming down. Previously, we saw a series of hikes, and people couldn't afford bonds anymore, high purchase agreements. Then we had high fuel price increases and food increases. In a recent business tech report I saw recently, they did a study, and they said that an average grocery basket of 15 staple items in 1995, it cost 82 Rand 48 cents. Fast forward to 2024, that same 15 items cost 644 Rand 28 cents, a 680% increase. And that's more or less in line with what Fatima said about the 700% increase for NERSA. So note the increase from 1995 to 2024. Inflation is 384%. Then we have the national shrinking of the national fiscus. And many of our municipalities, they don't listen to Auntie Dora. They take the equitable share for free basic services and the use for operations. And our poor indigent consumers are then debtors, and the debtor book then becomes overstated. Now, given all of these things that I've raised above, is this not of the reasons why our debtor book is so high? Is this not why we're battling to collect? I want to expand further on that. Mr. Ngidi talked about attracting national investors in terms of cost-reflective tariffs. But shouldn't we focus more in terms of financial sustainability in the short term and then look at attracting investors? Is it more a priority for us to be sustainable in the short term? National Treasury, I'm not sure if it still is the case, but annually when I put out the budget guideline and the statement, they give us a CPI index and indicate that in the budgets we put as municipalities, if we're above inflation or CPI, we need to give motivation. Does somebody interrogate that motivation and give us feedback? When we do our budgets and the budget C schedules, there's a column there that talks about audited outcomes. And that's there for a reason, colleagues. It's tell us what our past performance is in terms of collections. Do we pay attention to that? When we do our budgets, do we make the budget assumption to say that this budget is funded by revenue, provided we collect at a rate of X%? Or we simply do it by expenditure and then try and see how much money we can bring in? And often, where I live, there's heavy-handed tactics used by the municipality to collect. We'll talk more about that tomorrow. Then Fatima touched on the issue of delinquent municipalities, the 273 that didn't submit their cost of study to NERSA and ESCOM. It then begs the question, how did they then structure their tariffs for electricity? And what impact this has on consumers? And lastly, our Honorable Spannenberg, you talked about the ratio of utility versus household income. And now look at our vulnerable groups, our pensioners, our SASA, child-headed households. The increases per annum is like 50 Rand, 100 Rand every time the budget speech is announced. Not even keeping with inflation. And look at the utility bills. So are we sparing a thought for those people? So I'm saying these are the things we need to talk about at grassroots level in terms of debt book, collection levels. And I'm just saying these are all food for thoughts, colleagues. I'd like to pause there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And good afternoon, colleagues. And ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observe. I just want to touch on, make one few example that we currently have in terms of the affordability. We are currently facing a situation where even the so-called middle class are unable to afford specifically electricity. At KwaDokuza, where I'm coming from, we had a lot of prepaid customers that were paying services, and then this year they've also disappeared. So you find that now we had about 30,000 customers constantly paying, and then this year we are sitting at around 25,000 customers that are regular buyers. And this other chunk is just disappear because it's getting more and more expensive to do the services. When you look at the cost-reflective tariff that you are developing, what is happening is that you use your asset base, and the asset base that you have will tell you that based on your asset, this is how much you are required to operate and maintain. Previously, those used to be subsidized by the high middle class and the high-earning customers. Those customers now, the middle class, have disappeared, And then you also have the high earning that have moved to solar. And on our side, we are facing a situation where you have the assets that are costing so much that are installed, idling for holiday homes. If some of you are aware, in Palito, the majority of those houses are big houses, paying high rates, but their usage for electricity is so low. They only use the electricity December and January when they come for their holiday homes. However, their infrastructure that is there, you have 10 MVA transformers, you have the cables that are big, that are sitting at low usage throughout the year, and they are fully utilized. And unfortunately, you can't put them and remove them. That now it's December time, the infrastructure is still there, it needs to be maintained. So the issue now of subsidy, you are not getting that subsidy that we used to, that you're supposed to be getting from those customers so that you can subsidize the other ones. Hence, we are facing the current situation where our revenue is decreasing. However, we are unable. When you do the cost of supply, we've done it. And when we were putting the correct figures, it went so high until we had to adjust them and take some of the losses so that it is affordable that we can increase the tariff based on the cost of supply. However, the true reflection based on the asset values, it becomes so high that customers will not afford the electricity. There was once a debate about the issue of Soweto, that the people there want to pay a constant fee for electricity. We had the same debate, that why don't we say we want to increase the payment of services? Can't we just say maybe all these houses pay 200 rand, 300 rand fixed income? At least they are paying something, because now they are not paying anything. And fix that at that categories of informal, low-cost houses, a particular fee, because the current true cost per kilowatt hour is so high and they can't afford. At operation, what I'm looking at is that there was this issue of disconnection. You disconnect the services today in those customers. The same night, they go and steal a cable from another house that is paying and install it on that house. The following day, you have a job now to go and replace the cable on the other house that is paying, and the street light cables. This increased the operation cost. The operation costs now are so high because you went and disconnected the service and the person went and stole somewhere, and then you created additional work for yourself to a level where we said, maybe let's not disconnect, because we end up increasing more and more operational costs, which are counted on the cost of supply that we are doing, the cost reflection tariff that we are trying to calculate. So these are the issues that I like to put to you there and to my colleagues there, that how do we deal with this current situation when there is a legislation that we are following, that we are trying to comply fully with. However, the challenges on the ground are different, because some people actually can afford. There are those that, my colleague spoke about that, the willingness and affordability, but some really can't afford to pay for these services, because they have increased so much to 700% increase over the past 10 years or so, 10 to 20 years. they've increased so much to a level that they are unaffordable. And since they are not unaffordable, every year you're losing a customer that used to pay, but now is unable to do so. I'll post it. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for the invitation to come here today. When I walked in and sat at the back, I of course don't work in the municipal sector. Have never worked in the municipal sector. I've worked in many other sectors, but never the municipal sector. So I don't have first-hand knowledge of the challenges that you face, but it became very clear to me that you are dealing with a challenge, not of your own making, important as it is doing a cost of supply study, implementing legislation as you are required to do, but at the heart of the issue we are actually talking about is a political issue. It's not a technical issue. Choices around whether municipal services should be fully cost recoverable or not is a political issue. It belongs in the field of political ideology. And I'm not going to go much in that, but it is a particular trend that we see emerging in the late 70s. And why am I saying it's a political issue? Because when we talk about services like access to water, access to electricity, energy, access to sewage, roads, all of these are not like buying a car. All of these are necessary for human development and therefore has multiplier effects. So you can never pay for the full cost of electricity, no matter what. Because part of the cost of electricity, part of the effect of electricity is good educational outcomes. Part of the effect of water is a healthy, productive citizenry that we need for economic productivity and economic growth. And of course, sewage and sanitation, etc. So these are essential services for human beings. It can never quite be cost recovered. And therefore, how we pay for that is really a political decision that needs to be made at a level other than at the level of the municipality. So what I'm thinking is and I wasn't going to say this when I walked in, but as I was sitting there, I was realizing it's not a legal issue either. It is, we are caught up in this situation where in 1994, we had made various political choices, some of which we were forced into by the IMF and the World Bank. And what we are seeing now and what you are seeing now are the consequences thereof. So that's the first point. We should never talk about the economy. It is always the political economy. So that's the work I do. So that's the first point I wish to make. The second point I wish to make, which the other speakers here have also made, is of course when we talk about affordability, what is it we're talking about? We're talking about you and me going out into the market to buy something that we really, really, really need. And we can get that we really, really, really need. And we can get that or we cannot get that dependent on the amount of money I have in my pocket. So affordability is the relationship between the goods or services I try to acquire and the amount of money that I have in my pocket. That is what we mean when we talk affordability. So if a person who really honestly requires water, and we know that every human being requires water for their life and their life sustenance, then there are probably one of 3 or 4 things I'm going to do. I'm either going to disconnect myself from that. I'm either going to stop drinking water because now I don't have the money for it, and then I'm going to die, okay? Or it's food insecurity, whatever the case might be, disease, sickness, and then I will go to the hospital. And the little bit of money I lost with cost recovery for water, now I have to spend 100% more treating that person for the next 5 years. There is an interconnection. Or I will take money from what is essential, other things. So what we are seeing at the moment, and at this organization that I work for, and the research we're doing, is we are seeing a lot of this now. And that is that people are taking, they only have one budget, they have one income. So if electricity prices go up and electricity is important to them, they will then move money from one budget line item to another. And of course, what is the budget line item they use? Food. Because that's the only thing we can control. So then the Department of Health and government say, but we've got 25% of our children under the age of 5 are stunted. We know what that means. It means that in 20 years from now, 25% of our workforce will not be able to compete in the new economy. We know that. And then I'm saying, well, why are we surprised? It's the net result of that action. Anyone would do it. I would do it too. Or finally, if I cannot afford it, I will do what my colleague next to me had said, and that is, if I need that service desperately, I will illegally take it. But what happens then? What happens then? It's we inculcate a culture of lawlessness. Driving around Durban, nobody stops at red lights any longer. There's a culture of that. So those are the effects of not having a thing. And then finally, I want to perhaps just give you an example. So when we do research, I would advocate that municipalities not only do cost of supply research, but do an affordability research in their municipalities. Who can afford and what can they afford? And then what we normally do is we take money, does this person work and do they get a wage? Which is not really what poverty is. Poverty is multidimensional. But let's take an example for a national minimum wage worker, okay, who lives in Pietermaritzburg. Am I talking too long? Who lives in Pietermaritzburg. So that worker, and we know that 60% of all workers in South Africa earn at the level of the national minimum wage. That person will bring home 5,074 rand, roughly. Perhaps a little bit more because the employer can afford to pay a little bit more. According to the Pietermaritzburg research, 36% of that wage will go on to transport, 1,840. 2 taxis, 2-way. 350 kilowatts of electricity will cost you 1,043 rand, and that is 20%. Now, just those 2 expenditures is 56%, 57%. Now, that leaves you with something like about 1,000 or something for food, or 2,000 for food. But our research from my organization is that a basket of food for a household of 4 will cost you this month 3,750. So you can't buy that basket of food. So what do you do? This is not an issue you have created, but it's an issue that you have to respond to. And that's what I wanted to say around affordability.
Can I just mention something? What happened to you?
Thank you for the panel. I just want to confirm that last night I experienced the red lights in Durban. I tried to stop and everybody passed me. And I wondered why. Am I driving so slow or what's wrong with me? Thank you for that one.
This is the thing. I mean, Principle 101 in policy study, never create a policy, never put a law into practice that you cannot enforce. Because if I can go through a red robot, then tomorrow I'm going to take something else because I got away with it.
The next thing I want to say is the affordability of services. And I think although we want everybody to have certain services, we also created a situation where, let me first say, it's not that I don't want people to have certain things, but with this government grants we get, we build stadiums, we build big things, and those big things cannot be afforded by the poorest of the poor. So we create our own problems. That's basically a political, economical situation. And we must try to stop the situation. We cannot afford to give everybody a water connection inside the house. And please, again, I say I want everybody to have it. But if a person can't afford to have a water tap inside his house, then we should not give it to them, because we put those people in that bad position to go and take the electricity cable next door. So it's something to do with ourselves, and say you have really summed it very well. Thank you. And all the others, I just want to contribute the last one to your municipality. I don't have a house here somewhere next to the beach. But those people must pay basic charges that's higher than the normal. Because they use that service, that infrastructure that's lying there. They use it for a whole year without paying for it. And what part of the year are they using it? Only 1% of the year. But me and you that uses it every day, we pay the same amount. And that is not fair. So I think they must just be, according to your rates and taxes maybe, or according to the valuation of your property, you can find ways to charge them basic charges that's perhaps higher than the person who's staying permanently. Because that permanent person pays for the whole year, while the one that's only staying there for 3 or 4 or 5 days or a month, they pay basically nothing. So I agree with you. We must not shy away. And I don't want to chase those holiday makers away, but I don't think we must shy away of it. They can afford. Thank you.
No, thank you, Dek. Thank you so much. Now, let's try and wrap this up and assist our municipalities that are present here and give them takeaways. Maybe I should start with you, back to you, Dek, as a point of departure now. Your closing remarks in terms of how we can help our municipalities to use the socioeconomic data that is available, that is your property values, your income levels, your indigence, to create a tied or differentiated tariff system. How do we move forward now? Or maybe looking at it from a policy perspective, how can municipalities design tariffs that are both cost reflective and also sensitive to the household affordability that the gentlemen here have alluded to? Let's give them something to take away now for today as we wrap up this session from a policy perspective.
Chair, thank you. I think you didn't listen when I started with my presentation. I said no difficult questions to me. If I've been a politician, I would probably give you nice answers here. But very important, if we can just perhaps increase our basics. Remember the indigent, the poor household. They will get, National Treasury will give them equitable share. So if you increase your basics, everybody will pay a little bit more, and we basically subsidize the poorest of the poor. Except for that, you don't want to chase away your big customers, your good customers. So let us rather say, and this does not mean for water, because water is a scarce source. But if a person used more than 1,000 units of electricity, or maybe more than 500 units, let's make it cheaper for them. If you make it cheaper, I will tell my wife, now you can work harder, ironing and do something like that, because we can use more. But, sorry ladies, I'm just a little bit mischievous, but let the customer that can afford pay more because he used more, and not run away with solar. I'm not against green, but really that is a way to make sure that the average person can afford. If I have to use services like the stadium, let me pay more for it. If I want to use your graveyard for a funeral, let me pay more for it. Why? And I hope I'm not at the wrong track now, but I'm willing to buy 2 cows for 10,000 plus. So 20,000 rand, for my funeral. But I'm not willing to pay for a grave more than 500 rand. And to dig that grave, I don't know how you do it in your areas, but to dig that grave will probably take 4 hours for a back actor. And a back actor for 4 hours will cost you around about 1,600 rand. But we still charge them 300 rand for a grave. Does that make sense? If it's really a person that's vulnerable, a person that can't afford, they can go to the council and ask for assistance. And you will give that assistance to them. But they will not be that many. But the majority of the people will be able to pay much more for a grave. The majority of people will be able to pay much more to use your boardrooms, to use your facilities. The majority of people will pass your traffic lights. Let the traffic officers write them tickets. The poorest of the poor is in a taxi. The taxi owner will pay the ticket. Not the poorest of the poor, not the vulnerable person. Maybe if we can also assist where people must travel with taxis. It's public transport. A taxi for me is just an alternative way of public transport. And people paying 1,400, 1,700 rand a month to travel. How do we assist them? I don't say taxis must travel for free, but how do we assist them? Why don't we bring that equitable share also to another point, that subsidizing of people that must travel with taxis? Why don't we extract the subsidy and make it a little bit bigger? Why must we only keep a subsidy to the 5,000 rand or 5,700 rand a month, 5,070, I think? Why can't we subsidize a person that's earning 7,000 rand a month? Because what's the difference? So I don't have all the answers for you, but I can tell you, we are not subsidizing, although some people don't say it, but we are not subsidizing the poorest of the poor sufficiently. And that's why our country is not going steadily or upwards. We're basically going down with many more children. I have to say it, but I have connections with children at schools, not my own. And if you see how children suffer,
Thank you.
Let us help them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dick. Maybe coming back to Rajesh here, are you in support of the same notion as Dick is putting it? What are other mechanisms that our fellow colleagues from municipalities can use or introduce? What innovative funding models that can be subsidized to that effect, to the current problem that we are facing? Just a takeaway for
Chair.
our municipalities.
Chair, I'm going to be very brief, but thanks again for the opportunity. I think it's a little more than subsidizing, helping where we can. There's a lot of emphasis on revenue collection, revenue. But we don't seem to strike a balance to say expenditure as well. What are the cost containment? If we look at our municipalities, there's a lot of things that we are doing at municipalities we can do without or do less with. And I don't want to be controversial, but we look at bodyguard, for instance. Mayor, Speaker, 4, hire of firearms. Is that contributing to service delivery? I don't think it is. Employee-related costs. We say it shouldn't exceed 40% of your total operating expenditure. There's many municipalities here that are reaching almost 60%. So are we an employment agency? And I say this with greatest of respect. Or are we there to provide services? So I'm saying as much as we talk revenue and debt and things like that, but why are we not looking at expenditure? And perhaps, Chair, the last point I want to make regarding the issue of debt. I think we've also inherited a culture of non-payment, and it goes back to the prior years. And I think with respect, I say this as well, we somehow need to change that. If you look at SABC as a case study in terms of revenue collection, debt management, it's probably one of your worst examples you'll ever see. Look at the South African Postal Post Office. Look what's happened to them. And why? The inability to collect. Thank you, Chair.
No, thank you. Let's also give Babu Mhaule an opportunity to voice out his final remarks. Again, we are still on a policy perspective as we move forward. I think we've had a mouthful in terms of the cost of supply and affordability. Now, what do we give our fellow colleagues as a takeaway in terms of the strategies that they can employ to ensure economic drivers for this particular subject matter that we are discussing, and activities that are not settled by higher tariffs?
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon again. I'm not sure whether the issue of letting them pay more that are using more will work in the current, because we still have the green side of fighting as well, and we still need to try to balance that side. But I've taken some things myself, and I think the same things that can be taken by the rest of our colleagues here. The one is to review if we have done it, or to do the affordability for your customer base. Be clear exactly how much can they afford, what is it that they can afford. And from that, we develop tariffs that are reflecting that particular affordability. I think the 1 kilowatts charge for everyone, maybe it won't work now. We will need to change that one and come up with tariff for the certain customers and another tariff for certain customers, so that the people that can afford, they can pay for that services instead of one size fit all that we've been using for the couple of years.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for that. And lastly, Mr. Mervyn, I think we now know. I think you've also given us a few statistics in relation to the household income. You know, we now know that things are disproportionate, and obviously bad summing the lower income household, or in fact everyone is under that burden. Now, should affordability thresholds or exemptions be standardized across all municipalities? How should municipalities approach this current situation? How do we maneuver? How do we move forward out of this predicament that we find ourselves in as both municipalities and as well as consumers? Any other measures that we can put in place?
Yeah, so I would go back to the affordability research. I mean, we must attempt to find out what is the threshold, because putting a tariff beyond the affordability threshold just creates other social problems.
Yeah, yeah.
No? So it is really critical, but also that must then be integrated with the framework for the equitable share.
Yeah.
Which I think is the way in which I don't think we can subsidize, cross-subsidize in municipalities, but we probably don't have enough revenue to do that. It will have to happen at a national level. And the mechanism could be the equitable share. And I would then also say that the equitable share should become a conditional grant. It is given for cross-subsidization of services. It must be used for that services and only for that services. An example, I was on a radio interview with somebody from Power, Johannesburg Power. He told us that they have 9,000 people on the indigent list that they are giving to. But National Treasury is giving something like about I think something like 300,000 grants. So what are you doing? What are you doing with the rest? Those should become conditional. But the principle of cross-subsidization is, I would fully agree with, is the only way we can go. But it will also have to come from national more.
Do you perhaps think there are acceptable trade-offs that can be reached out of that process?
I mean, it's difficult in one sense because we haven't conducted a specific study on exactly or modeling of how this could work.
Okay.
And I think that we do have the resources. I know at Gibbs, for instance, they've got fantastic modeling resources, so we could model this. The issue is whether there is a political will to make that decision. And I think that is where there is a lot of questions. There isn't enough money in the pot for everything.
Yeah.
So I fully agree with what my colleague said here. We need to look at expenditure. We need to identify what are the most critical services we want to render and render those services. There isn't enough for everything. And then render those services at a level that enhances human dignity and that can have a multiplier effect. A healthier nation, a more educated nation, which would lead us 15, 20 years down the line to a richer and a more wealthier nation. And I think that's when things will begin to turn around.
Thank you.
But I'm sorry, I can't give you exact answers.
No, thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Colleagues, let's give them a round of applause. I think we tried to get as much as we can from these experts in their field. Maybe let's give them some token of appreciation for their time. Feel free to engage them just outside of this meeting as well. If you need further details, I know that we brought something new in the form of the Pietermaritzburg Economic Justice and Dignity Group. They are in it for the community. So they speak on behalf of the public out there. They do research, a lot of research in terms of what is happening currently in economic terms. So we're really graced by their presence. If you give them another round of applause. Thank you so much to our brother as well, Duma Mahaule. You will obviously going to hear more from Rajesh tomorrow, unpacking other areas within what they do as Ukokta. I'll just give them, sorry, they use, oh, that's abuse. Right.